Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum Dr. Hopefully you are good, Dr. So I would like to present my project paper, which is titled Economic Growth, Inflation and Unemployment, and empirical evidence using the earlier approach in Malaysia. So this is my table of content, consists of introduction, literature review, data and methodology, and the second part is the empirical analysis, discussion and conclusion. Last but not least is my list of the reference. So in the introduction of the background of the study, the determinant of indicator, which is what's the factor influence the economic growth, on the influence toward the economic growth is still in debating and arguing. So some argue, which is a past research, stated that to exercise inflation and unemployment as a parameter, while the other researcher stated that need to combine with trade openness and foreign direct investment. So increasing the economic growth is related to the productivity in terms of financial and production. For instance, productivity of a firm depends on the number of workers demanded to conduct the technology and innovation of a product in a period of time. If the demanded is high, it will lower the rate of unemployment, and the financial institution would decrease the interest rate as to increase the financing to acquire more productivity. So for my problem of statement, engaging on expense the economic growth with several policy, including fiscal or monetary policy, is important correspondent to unemployment and inflation. So to decrease the rate of unemployment by increasing the productivity of workers as the expansion of economic growth. So during the crisis, for instance COVID-19 or financial crisis, outbreak as emerging issue, effect on the unemployment and inflation as concerned by Mahfud and his fellow friend as to mitigate the issue during post-event. From this, the role of unemployment and inflation rate is vital and essential to policymakers in Malaysia as striving for developed countries. So for my research objective consists of two, which is to examine the relationship between economic growth, unemployment and inflation rate in Malaysia. Second part is to identify the policy recommendation to the relationship between economic growth, unemployment and inflation rate in Malaysia. So for my research contribution, in terms of the empirical evidence for Malaysia, this study contributes to the existing literature by providing updated empirical evidence on the relationship between economic growth, inflation and unemployment in Malaysia. Secondly is the application of the ARD approach. Unlike the conventional econometric technique, the ARD model allows for a comprehensive analysis of both short-term fluctuation and long-term equilibrium relationship, making the findings more relevant for policy formulation. For the second part is a literature review. Firstly, there is a theoretical framework between the unemployment and inflation, which we know that there is a theory related to the unemployment and inflation. First part is a Philip curve. So Philip curve originally proposed by A.W. Philip in 1958 is described an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment, implying a trade-off between the two macroeconomic indicators. Secondly, the theory is a Okun's law that is proposed by Arthur Okun in 1962. They established a negative relationship between economic growth and unemployment. So the study integrates this theoretical foundation by empirically assessing how inflation and unemployment and economic growth interact in Malaysia. Secondly, there's a previous empirical finding, which is the relationship between economic growth and unemployment. So who found that in the long term, a significant and negative impact of unemployment on economic growth in ASEAN country. Same go in Tunisia as found by Mahfud and his fellow friend, and in the Palestine found by the Reza and his fellow friend. Contrary to Italy and his fellow friend, stated that trade openness and unemployment have a positive impact on factor productivity. This means productivity is related to economic activity which increase the economic growth. In terms of foreign direct investment, which is FDI, which impact the economic growth, Al-Hati found that the long-run observation of the relationship between unemployment and FDI was found to be positive and significant. Some studies stated that were used unemployment as an explain variable influenced by economic growth. To this end, the present study is based on the theory as determinant of economic growth by unemployment. The second part from the previous empirical study, the relationship between economic growth and inflation rate. Same based from previous, that WHO stated that in the long term, a significant negative impact of inflation on economic growth in the ASEAN country. Teddy and his fellow friends show inflation has a negative but insignificant relationship with total productivity, both in the short and long run. In terms of FDI, which impact the economic growth, Al-Hati found positive and highly significant long run relationship between FDI and inflation. So in Palestine, Razia and his fellow friend found that no evidence of short-term impact of inflation on economic growth. In relation between inflation rate and unemployment, some studies found that a negative relationship between them as proposed by Philip Curve. So from my previous decision review, we can create a conceptual framework. So the first one is that there is significant and negative relationship between economic growth and unemployment rate. Secondly, there is a significant and positive relationship between economic growth and inflation rate. Thirdly, there is no causality between economic growth and unemployment rate. Last but not least, there is no causality between economic growth and inflation rate. So the third part is the data and methodology. So the first one is the source of our data is from World Development Indicator by annually grow from 1991 to 2023. The total number of observation is 33. We reach balanced data by selecting Malaysia as our sample study, and there is no data misplaced. This was to ensure that the data accurately represent the population being studied, especially important when the data is being used to make decision or draw conclusion. As table 1, we can see from the right side, the dependent variable is economic growth affected by unemployment and inflation. So economic growth is scaled by GDP growth. The unemployment rate of total labour force estimated modeled by International Labour Organization, while inflation rate by Consumer Price Index. All of them are annually grow within a time frame. So this is the first part is from the table 2, the statistic summary of the variable, which is there is a mean, standard deviation, maximum, minimum of the variable. So on the basis of the descriptive statistic, the GDP has the highest mean, while the inflation has the lowest mean. GDP is highly volatile, while unemployment is less volatile. So the second part is a correlation metric. We want to show there is a correlation between variable. For example, GDP and unemployment, GDP and inflation from the table 3. So the correlation that unemployment is negatively linked with GDP. In contrast, inflation is positively correlated with GDP. The strongest positive association is between inflation and GDP, whereas the least effective relationship is between unemployment and GDP. So after we explain about the statistic, about the data, we need to first specify our model, how many lags we want to put in the model. So we need to use model selection and lag length determination. So the lag length criteria suggests an optimal lag of 2 for the VAR model, as indicated by the asterisk next to the value of LR, FPE, AIC, and HQ at lag 1. This implies that NREL, which is lag for the variable GDP, unemployment, and inflation, which is 1, model might be appropriate with lag 1 for both the dependent and the regressor. So what is the methodology in our econometric in my study use? Firstly, we use the unit root test, which to show that invalid inference and misleading regression can result from non-saturated data. By incorporating lag differences, the augmented Dickey-Fully in 1979 test expand the Dickey-Fully test to higher order auto-regressive processes. The sample size, the presence of deterministic factor, and the significant level all affect the critical value for the ADF test statistic, which are derived from simulation. An alternative to the ADF test, which is the second test in unit root, is a Philip Caron in 1988. So the difference between them is ADF is without the lag difference. When the unit root null hypothesis is rejected, indicate that the time series is stationary and appropriate for use with a conventional analysis technique. So the second part is we want to test our ARDN model, which is we know from the previous that the number of lag is 1. So the ARDN model, if there is co-integration test, we need to test using the F test. So the null hypothesis of no co-integration is tested against the alternative hypothesis of co-integration using f-test. If the computed f-test statistic to the lower bound, it cannot reject the null hypothesis of no co-integration. If f statistic exceed the upper bound, we reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there is evidence of co-integration. If in between, we are indecisive. So we need to base on the economic theory. The third part is we need to diagnose our model, which is AR model. We need to test if there is a series correlation, heteroscedasticity, normality and stability. So in the series correlation, we use LM series correlation. Bruce Pagan got free for heteroscedasticity, Jack Bera histogram for the normality, and Kusum and Kusum square for the stability. So if the p-value are greater than significant level, the model is considered as good model when there is no series correlation and heteroscedasticity. At the same time, residual are normal. For the Kusum and Kusum square, if the plot stay within 5% significant bound, the model parameters are stable over time. Last but not least, we want to test if there is Granger causality between the variable. That we need to examine the causal relationship between the variable. We perform Granger causality using the estimated AR model. If there is a causality between GDP and unemployment, or GDP and inflation, alternative hypothesis is reached. The direction of causality either bidirection or unidirection. So the first part, as we mentioned earlier, that our first test is to test the unit root, as table show here, that according to the p-value, which is the p-value less than the 1% of the unit root, that's for the ADF and PP. The null hypothesis is denied at the level for a study variable, except unemployment, which poses stationary at the first difference. So we can see from there that the asterisk for the star, if there is a star, so the p-value is less than 0.01%. So the second part is the co-integration result, which is a bound test. We can see from here that our f statistic is greater than the lower bound, which is 19.04 is greater than 6.265. So according to the table, f statistic is above the upper bound and the lower bound at the 1%. We can reject the null hypothesis of no co-integration and conclude that there is evidence of long-run relationship between the variable. The part is we want to estimate our model, which is ARM model. So the coefficient of the lag dependent variable, which is the GDP, the regressor, our unemployment and inflation, and the constant term, are reported along with their standard error as table 7. So the model show a good fit, which is our height r square 0.65, and a significant f statistic, which is f statistic is probability for f statistic is less than 0.01. So we want to ensure that our model is good using the error correction model, which is the second part of after we estimate the AR model. So table 8 show the unemployment, which is the previous unemployment, and the previous inflation are the long run estimation, while D unemployment and D inflation are short run. The long run coefficient show the long run relationship between the dependent variable and the regressor, unemployment and inflation. So we can see from here that in the long run there is a positive correlation between GDP, unemployment and inflation, but in the long run there is a negative correlation between them. So the short run coefficient for D show the immediate impact of change in unemployment and inflation on the change in the GDP. So our negative 0.99, which is show that the model is correct in the long run in 99%. So our diagnostic test, which is 3 diagnostic tests, which is series correlation, hetero and normality. 2 of them which is show that this model is good, which is series correlation is greater than p-value, but for the our model exists the heteroscedasticity, which is the less than p-value. But our model in the Jack-Bera is normal, which is greater than 0.01%. So this is the stability test, which is a figure 1a and figure 1b in the Kusum and Kusum Q. We can see from the blue line is within the red line for the both graph. So there is a rule of thumb. If the blue line is within the red dashed line, it indicates that the model is stable. So the two red lines represent 5% of the significant level. The result of both presented in figure 1a, which is Kusum, and figure 1b, Kusum Q, respectively validate the stability of our model. So last but not least, our causality results show that the Granger causality test suggest that unemployment does not Granger cause GDP at 10% significant level, which is our P value is greater than 10%, while there is no evidence that GDP Granger cause unemployment, P value is greater than 10%. This indicates a bi-direction causal relationship running from unemployment to GDP. This is same goes to the inflation and GDP and inflation, as we show from the table 10. So our discussion and conclusion. So the first one, our discussion, the effect of relationship required to implement the auto-regulation diffuser led in the case of Malaysia Study from 1991 to 2013. So our model selection criteria to include number of led rationally based on AIC is 1. The unemployment and inflation are positively affect the national income. So the past income significantly affect the current national income. The speed of adjustment to the long run equilibrium is about 19%, as we showed from the previous. Our equilibrium is corrected within one time period. The causality test suggest that unemployment does not cause GDP and vice versa. Same with the inflation and GDP causality. So in conclusion, the present target is to investigate the relationship between gross domestic product and unemployment and inflation. So for the policy implication, first, credible inflation targeting policy should be given top priority by authorities, and the government should provide opportunity for people to improve their skill and ability. This could emphasize on the severity of the increasing interest rate and decreasing the unemployment. In the short run, unemployment and inflation may decrease the national income, while in the long run, they are increasing the income. Focusing on the incentive to increase the productivity of production, and workers may strengthen the economy in the long run as the more workers are demanded. So as you can see that there is limitation and further study need to be done after this. So the present study is limited to study on single country, which is Malaysia. So the study may study on ASEAN, China or Southeast ASEAN as sample in terms of different region. This could give hand out more pictures and reach general conclusion between the countries. Other than that, the region study should utilize panel dynamic method. Either there is no or existence of asymmetric effect on selected variable using the NREL is more appropriate method on this study. Moreover, future research needs to add more variable that would be utilized to estimate the economic growth other than unemployment and inflation rate. So our study is ignore the structural break during financial crisis in 1998 and COVID-19 outbreak in 2020 that may affect the stationarity of the time series. Furthermore, we may suggest future research to use zero and zero test in a unit group more appropriate as to allow for such a rate test. So last but not least, this is my reference. Thank you so much. Hopefully my presentation is reached to you. Assalamualaikum.